Welcome to this week's episode of MIAA 360. Broadcasting live inside of the MIAA Network Studio, I'm Ben Ferris. Coming up a little later in the show, we get a chance to sit down with our very own Commissioner Mike Racy to find out what's new with the MIAA. But first, we're going to head down south to Missouri Southern State University, where we get a chance to sit down with the Lions' Director of Athletic Media Relations, Justin Maskus, to find out what led him to the Lions and some of his duties at the university.
I'm the Director of Athletic Media Relations, and I'm one of our senior admin here as well, with Jared, our Athletic Director, and as well as Carissa, our Director of Internal Ops. We form our senior admin team, and so I have a little bit more responsibility outside, just like a lot of our other SIDs in the league have. I am also, outside of the normal SID duties that we have, or as far as publications, doing stats at games, doing social media, doing our video. I also have some other administrative duties where I'm responsible for hiring all of our table workers. I'm responsible for hiring some of our officials that are not hired by the MIAA. And, I'm also responsible for making sure that all of those table crews and setups are done each game too as well. So there are other responsibilities that make the job culminate into what it is.
You mentioned game management, those kind of roles. You also do some time as a broadcasting, do you not?
I do. We do a weekly coaches radio show. We do an hour-long show at one of our businesses here in town, and so we do it during football season, do it during basketball season as well, and that's pretty fun. I never would have imagined that I would do anything like that. I got into it at a previous job kind of as a necessity. We didn't have anybody else that could do it, so I did it. And then I get here, and I've done some color commentary with basketball teams on the road, and I transitioned to doing I do our play-by-play for baseball whenever we can. We'll do those on the radio and we'll stream those as well, and then we started up a show a few years back, a coach's show, and it migrated from half an hour to an hour as well. And that show used to be hosted by our radio voice, and it used to be just football. We just had during football season, but with our new partnership that we had here a few years ago, I got approached to host that show as well, and so that's been fun. It's another thing on Mondays that I get to prepare for, but I've got some great coaches that make it pretty easy for me.
You've got ties to the MIAA as a student. Talk about your time at Central Missouri.
Yeah, I went to Central Missouri. I graduated in 2001 with a degree in PR, and got lucky that one of the things Central does that I thought was the norm, and coming here I found out it's not quite the norm, is they require minors for most of their degrees as well. So I got to do graphic arts while I was there. And so learned a little bit about that. It was definitely a great prep for this field. Started off working, I was a journalism major for a while, but started off working with the student newspaper. And I got exposed to the athletic department there, coaches through that. And by the time I got to my senior year, realized that I wasn't going to be a journalist. I think I had decided that I had already changed my major to PR, and I approached their SID, Bill Tarnage, at the time. Bill's a great guy. He's been around the league for many years, and said, "Hey, do you need any student workers?" And he's, "Sure. I don't think in this position we're going to turn away anybody." And so for the last semester, I worked there with Bill, and partway through, I made a decision that I was going to go to grad school and I was a GA at Southeast Missouri, and that's how I got into this business. And from there, I went on to work at a small Division II school in Memphis, and I've been here at Southern for about 12 years now.
Yeah, your career basically has been, I think, 16 years overall, 12 here at Missouri Southern. And one thing I got to ask you about, talk about all the technology changes that have occurred from the time you started to today, and have obviously some of those have probably made your job easier, and some have probably made your job harder. Talk about it.
Well, you talk about technology changes. The funny thing is throughout the course of those 16 years, we're still using the same stat program. It has not changed. That's the funny thing. They're working on it. They're trying to get it into this century. They're being pushed by a lot of IT folks here on many of their campuses to get it into a newer format, and they're getting close. But when I first started, social media wasn't around. Facebook hadn't started up. We were still faxing in all of our box scores to our media. Email was there, the websites were there. Luckily, when I first started, we had a website at Southeast Missouri that was, based off a content management system where I didn't have to go in and edit it personally or design it personally. But when I got to Christian Brothers, the school I was at before here, and then when I got to Missouri Southern, both of those schools started off with an on-campus based website that we eventually merged and got into, an off-campus type website. But that has been the big time saver, is going from a site where you design yourself to something that is on a content management system where it goes from taking an hour to put up one story to 10, 15 minutes, And so technology, like you said, has advanced. We didn't do anything with video when I first started, and that's a new thing. We didn't have any of our social media apps that we use now. Smartphones weren't around. But with that being said, like you said, the more technology you have, the faster it is for people to get your results, to get the stuff you put online, and they become more accustomed to that. And so now, instead of having a little bit more of a lax deadline after a game, it's go, get it out now.
Talk about the challenges at the D2 level. Obviously, at the D1 level, they have larger staffs. Mm-hmm. They specialize in maybe certain sports. You're responsible for everything here. You've got one full-time assistant. Talk about the challenges that you face trying to do all of those things.
There are some challenges. There are some good things. At the Division I level, you may have more people on staff. Not many more. The one Division I school I worked at, we just had the one full-time and 2 GAs. But we traveled with every single sport that we had. That was the hard thing. At the Division II level, some still travel, but it's more of an option. You don't have to do it, and that's the one thing that is, that keeps the life in a balance, there as well. I have one full-time staff member, and then I have 3 student assistants. They work great for me, and there's a lot of times it's got to the point now where in basketball games I don't have to keep stats anymore. And so I sit there and luckily I've got someone for the most part operating our instant replay machine, but if they're not there, that's my responsibility. But for the most part, I just write the game stories of basketball and sit back and enjoy it a little bit. I get to be the typical SID a little bit more with baseball. Still keeping stats for that, but now we've got streaming, and now we have radio as well. And luckily, I can do the stream and the radio all with the same computer at the same time, so it's a little bit more streamlined there. But we have 14. It's going to be 15 sports. We just added women's golf as well, and then we've got 2 JV programs. So if you really add those in, it's more like 17 sports that we have here. But yeah, we can't specialize. We've got everything. So in the fall, I've got football, volleyball, and cross country going on. In the winter, I've got men's basketball and indoor track and field. You get in the spring, you still have a little bit more of indoor track and field, and I've got baseball and then outdoor track and field. And so it never stops. You don't have any of the downtime that you may have at the Division I level to prep for the next season. So your summer begins. It is your prep time. So,
what do you enjoy the most about your job?
I get paid to watch sports, but really it's the relationships with the kids, with the student athletes. I've been at a few of my student athletes' weddings, and I know my daughter actually goes to the same daycare that one of my former student athletes' kids go to, which dates me a little bit, but to know that I've got a former student athlete of mine with kids the same age as mine. So it's fun having those relationships outside of the game.
In addition to your job here, you've performed some roles in assisting the conference office. You've also served a term on the NCAA National Baseball Committee. Talk about that experience.
That was fun. I was on the National Baseball Committee from 2008 to 2011. It was an interesting time in 2008 because we had just, the NCAA had just made a decision to pull the baseball championship away from Montgomery, Alabama. It had been there for multiple decades. But that year, we kind of got thrown into the championship because we had to find a place for it. We had it in St. Louis for 1 year, but from there, we moved on and found a new home. It's been in Cary, North Carolina for, since 2009, and they're a great host. They are great people to work with. I think that they would rival the people up in Omaha in the effort that they put into the championship, and it's a beautiful facility to play with. I mean, they've got 4 major league quality diamonds to play on at that place, and but it's another thing to add on it. It's very time consuming. We would have you would have your regional call every Monday. You would have a national call every Tuesday. Every Wednesday, you usually would be getting people calling you, complaining about the polls. But it's fun. You get through it, and you have those 3 months of the season, and you get through. And once you get to the regionals, then it's just watching it all play out. And luckily, I had some very good hosts at regionals and it was at our conference school for 3 of the 4 years that I was on it. And so, but I had some very good folks to work with. They run those regionals, so I'm there, and I don't have to really do much about anything. So,
you mentioned life in the balance earlier. How you've got a family at home, wife, daughter. How do you try to make sure you maintain life in the balance with all of your duties and responsibilities?
One of the big things is I stopped traveling years ago. The only time that I will travel now is if it's a there and back type trip. And usually if it's some of our closer opponents, like a Pittsburgh State or Southwest Baptist, and maybe even down to Northeastern State, those are all within 2 hours. But I've got to be at home, and it was a little bit rough for me the last 18 months because I was finishing up my master's degree here as well. And so I would have the job here, and then I'd go to class at night. And so that luckily is over. That's done. Now I can go home. It's a little bit weird being at home every single night of the week. But you have to go home. You have to have your downtime. You have to separate from the job. It's hard to do in this profession, but you have to learn how to separate from the job there.
Last question. If someone approaches you, they're interested in a career in media relations, what kind of pieces of advice would you give them? Volunteer as much as you can right now, and then diversify yourself. You can't be just a writer. You can't be just a person that does stats. You can't just be a person that does graphics. You've got to learn how to do every one of them. The more skills that you have, the easier it is going to be to sell yourself and get into that position.
Now, our very own Associate Commissioner of External Affairs, Larry House, sits down with our Commissioner, Mike Racy, to update us on what's new at the MIAA.
Commissioner Racy, just a few weeks ago, we were up at the NCAA Convention in Indianapolis. Talk about what the league talked about during that time.
Yeah, Larry, it was a great convention. Indianapolis was a little like Kansas City right now. It was really cold, so we didn't get out very much. We stayed inside, and forced us to have some good dialogue and good discussions about a number of issues. The big issue for the MIAA right now is membership, and really every Division II conference in the country right now is talking about membership. There's a lot of movement. The Lone Star Conference is expanding. The Heartland Conference here in the Midwest is going to be closing their operations here after next year, and so there's just a lot of interest in what's going on, where people are. People thinking about, are we in the right place geographically and competitively? So we have to be proactive in the MIAA. So we spent a lot of time. We had a special meeting of our ADs, and our presidents got together to talk about membership. And then our presidents got together after that and had some discussions. We took really two main actions, Larry. One was we created a membership task force and a football task force for the MIAA to start to identify some key issues, some core values, strategic principles that we want to look at as relates to both how big do we want to be, do we want to grow, are we in expansion mode, are we comfortable where we're at. On the football side, we need to do things that help protect the position the MIAA has as one of the strongest football conferences in the country. So those task forces are going to get to work right away. The membership task force chaired by Dr. Charles Ambrose at Central Missouri, and then the football task force chaired by Steve Scott, President Steve Scott at Pittsburgh State University. Also on the membership front, we've had interest from schools that don't sponsor football that want to be members of the MIAA. And that's an issue that we're looking at. We haven't made any decisions. Our task forces will look at that issue. But Newman University in Wichita, Kansas, in our footprint, has written to the conference and expressed interest. And our presidents took action also in January to invite Newman as an associate member beginning in 2019. Now that could change if we open membership to schools without football and we decide to expand. But right now, Newman offers a number of sports where we need schools. We need member institutions sponsoring that sport to help us with NCAA automatic qualification, issues like that, sports like tennis, men's soccer, golf, and so Newman University will add value to the conference immediately, and they'll start as an associate member in 2019.
Also at the league meetings at the convention, I had a chance to introduce one of our new corporate partners, McCall Gordon.
Yeah, exciting day, Larry. McCown Gordon, we inked the deal just a couple of days before the convention for them to come on as the new presenting sponsor of the MIAA Commissioners Cup, and they were so excited that they wanted to be with us when we announced that to our membership, and so they drove out to Indianapolis, and we had them start the day with us on Friday at our athletic director president's meeting, and had a chance to share that great news with the membership. And then later that day, we had an opportunity for McGowan Gordon to interact socially with all of our presidents, athletic directors, faculty reps, senior women administrators, and they felt really good leaving Indianapolis about the reception they got as a new partner with the MIAA. McCown Gordon, one of the best and most recognizable construction companies in the Midwest, and their business model and where they work lines up on top of the MIAA footprint perfectly. And they want to do more in the world of higher education and sports properties. And some of our schools are already working with them, and McGowan Gordon hopes that more schools in the MIAA will have a chance to work with them in the future.
Another new initiative that we launched recently was the creation of the A-Team podcast, hosted by you, a weekly podcast.
Right.
Kind of complements what we're doing on the MIAA Network and shows like this. Talk about the creation of the podcast.
Yeah, well, I think we could have probably found a better host, but anyway, it's been fun to get that launched. We've had 6 shows, and it's so important today for us to use platforms like we have with the MIAA Network and this show, and then now our podcast to really help fans of the MIAA and those that may not know what we're doing, to give them information about the great things going on in our conference. And the podcast will really it will complement this show. It'll bring national leaders in higher education and intercollegiate athletics an opportunity to chat with me once a week, 20-25 minutes, and we'll talk about the current issues impacting intercollegiate athletics and try and tie that in how that impacts the MIAA and our member schools. And we've had a lot of fun getting that launched, and I'm excited. It seems to be well received, and a lot of people are tuning in and like what they've heard so far. So.
Well, that's great. Obviously, this is an exciting time of the year. MIAA basketball championships just around the corner. What are some things that the fans and even the teams are going to see different this year when they arrive?
Well, the thing that's not different is that we're here in Kansas City, helping to start March Madness in Kansas City. The venue is a historic municipal auditorium that's hosted more national championships than any other venue in the country. We'll be housing all of our teams at the iconic Marriott downtown hotel, and just up the street from the relatively new entertaining Power and Light District in Kansas City. So those are the things that aren't new, and those are the things that our student athletes and coaches and fans love about Kansas City and the MIAA basketball tournament. But what is new is really a facelift inside Municipal Auditorium, a brand new court, brand new locker rooms, relatively new video boards, and it just gives us a chance to showcase, what we think are some of the best basketball teams, coaches, student athletes in the country, to put them in a venue that's that historic, but has all the new amenities that make the student athlete experience so positive. So it's an exciting time to be in Kansas City with all the basketball going on, and for the MIAA to really help kick that off next week.
Another thing that's not new is the partnership with some of our member institutions, their student video production teams, to come up and actually produce the broadcast of all the championship games, all 4 days. It's a partnership with Central Missouri, Pittsburgh State, and Fort Hays. They do different duties in terms of streaming the games, covering the press conferences, halftime, post-game shows. And we really kind of brought our A game last year in the fact that we were able to take that group and partner with Spectrum Sports here in Kansas City, that we actually created a television broadcast on Championship Sunday that was totally produced, run by our student teams.
And syndicated, I think, into 8 different states.
Right.
Seeing that MIAA men's and women's championship games. Larry, last year was my first year with the conference and the basketball championship. First year to see those student broadcasters in action. I've been around intercollegiate athletics and higher education a long time, and I've never seen anything like it. To see 3 universities and their broadcast communication departments, Pitt State, Hayes, and UCM, to come together, bring their professors and their students together, and create really a seamless broadcast team. Everything from sideline reporters to halftime shows to covering the press conferences to the actual game broadcast. It's first rate. We had an opportunity to spend some time with Spectrum Sports yesterday, and they had lots of compliments for the student broadcasters and producers and everyone involved with last year's championship. That's why they want to do it again this year if we can make it work. But that is one element of the MIAA tournament I don't think a lot of people see and know about, but gosh, it's something I like to brag about. We've got talented students on the court, and our fans appreciate that, and you and I appreciate the talent that we have, our students have in broadcasting. We've got a lot of young men and women that will go on to great careers in broadcasting, and some of them are going to tell a story that they got their start at the MIAA basketball tournament. But it's a great feature that you've helped create, and our schools, Hayes and Pittsburgh State and Central Missouri, have helped implement, and it's a great part of MIAA tournament week.
Another new partnership that's going to be part of the basketball tournament, but it's going to extend way beyond that, is the partnership we're developing right now with the Boys and Girls Club of Kansas City. Yeah,
the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kansas City is such an important organization that touches so many lives in Kansas City, and we've had opportunities in the last couple of weeks to really begin to dive into what a true partnership might be between that organization and the MIAA, and a lot of things still to be worked out, but we're gonna help launch that at this year's basketball tournament. And the thing that I'm excited about really is the two-way focus that this partnership will have. One direction is what can we do for these young people that are part of the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kansas City. We certainly have events that they can come and watch and enjoy watching college student athletes perform their athletic skills. But there are also things that we can do for these young boys and girls that help introduce them to college athletics and put them in an apprenticeship type role where they can observe and watch and learn, and we'll have them involved with our tournament and watching the person and shadowing the person running our press conferences or some of our student workers on the cameras and things like that. So there's a lot of things that we can do from an educational standpoint with the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kansas City. There's also things that they can do for our current college students that are going to be looking for opportunities in the summer and perhaps throughout the school year to do internships or volunteer opportunities or opportunities for them to get involved and to work with these young kids and to make their lives better. So we're looking at all of these opportunities on how our two great organizations can work together. I think you and I talked the other day, Larry, that both the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kansas City and the MIAA got their start in 1912. So both organizations go back a long way, and took us a while to figure out a way to work together, but we're there, and I'm excited about the future of that partnership.
One other thing we're doing at the tournament, kind of to further engage with the community of Kansas City, is having youth basketball day on Saturday, where any student that plays youth basketball can get into the games for free.
Right. Yeah. So, so many kids in Kansas City go on to play MIAA college basketball, men's team or women's team. So many of our rosters are dominated by Kansas City high school players. So for us to have an opportunity to give young boys and girls in Kansas City that are part of youth basketball a chance to come and be in their uniforms and to watch our semifinal games on Saturday, it'd be a real treat. And I know a lot of our student athletes will look up in the crowd and see young kids in basketball uniforms and remember it wasn't too long ago that they were exactly in that seat. So who knows? Maybe the next Justin Pitts is going to be running around the Municipal Auditorium next Saturday watching some games and someday wearing an MIAA jersey somewhere and trying to win a national championship.
Commissioner Racy, thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Larry.
If you're interested in attending the MIAA Basketball Championship Tournament being held at the Municipal Auditorium here in Kansas City, March 1st through the 4th, tickets are being sold on campuses at Ticketmaster.com and the Municipal Auditorium box office. Finally, MIAA Indoor Track and Field Championships are here, starting today, Friday the 23rd, and ending Sunday the 25th. They're being held at Robert W. Plaster Center at Pittsburgh State University. Now, if you're not able to attend the event, don't worry, the MIAA Network has you covered. Starting the live stream today at 1:45 p.m., on Saturday at 11:15 a.m., and Sunday at 11:15 a.m. That's our show for this week. From all of us here at the MIAA Network Studio, I'm Ben Ferris. Thanks for watching, and until next week, bring your A game.